Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the LMTV WTF, which could stand for Wednesday Technical Forum, but we know that's not true because today is not Wednesday. But it is true that it stands for Where is Tony Fortunato? So as you can see, Tony is either in some kind of warehouse or he's actually at an undisclosed customer site because he's got a lot of really interesting stuff behind him. And Tony is going to talk to us about one of the papers that he posted recently, right, Tony?
Yep. It's actually, this transcends a lot of topics, but we're going to start with FTP. So I didn't want to interrupt you too much, but go ahead, Denny. You can finish up.
I'm just going to finish up by introducing my cohort, Dr. Tim O'Neill, who's either wearing a tuxedo or he's
got my Emory shirt on.
All right, and that piece of plumbing that he has on the right side of the screen is actually his homemade speaker mount. Yeah, I don't want you to think that we're in the wrong place here.
Nice.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Tony, let's get on the show. Oh, by the way, this is our 100th LMTV, 100th episode of LMTV.
And we got Tony's ghost on.
Yes.
Yay! All right, so let's do the old screen share dance here, folks. Let me just see if I can do this without messing everything up. All right, so screen share. All right, Denny and Tim, you can see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So the biggest problem we have with any of these little case studies or tips and tricks I give people is how are you going to capture these packets, and that matters a lot. Last week I was with a customer. We were talking about this in great depth, and they weren't even aware of the stuff they were missing when they had a spanner mirror report. And it was I'm still shocked when I talk to network analysts who've been in the industry for a while, and they're not familiar with the word tap. They all know what a hub is. So the analogy I tell people is a tap's like a full duplex hub, if you want a crude analogy. But again, if you are going to capture these things, please document how you've captured it. Is it from the PC or the client, the server? If you're somewhere in between, where are you, what VLAN, all that kind of stuff. Secondarily, if you need a capture filter, what are you capturing on? Sometimes you do use the IP, sometimes the port number. If you do use port numbers, please make sure you know what port number, and the application doesn't start changing it to a range or a random number. And all that other stuff I covered in another FTP session. So the other options that we have with any example is this last point, where we include reviewing the application logs, so on and so on. So in this example, you'll actually see a little bit of both. So here's some screenshots from the actual video that I put out there. And in this case, I wanted to show people what it would look like when the FTP server ran out of connections. And all I did was took my little FTP server here. It's literally called the Quick and Easy FTP server. It's a portable app. There's nothing to install. And I set my maximum connections to 1. And I set my maximum connections per IP to 1. And that way, when my computer tries to connect, it's only got 1 connection to work from. And anybody who knows FTP needs more than 1 connection, 1 for control and 1 for data minimally, so that's 2. So I wanted to intentionally see what would happen when I break this. And this is something I tell people in all my sessions and workshops and classes. You got to break things. You want to find out how your tools report stuff back to you. Because if you don't know what that looks like, then you're always going to be behind the 8 ball when you see that crazy message that you don't quite understand. So in this example, we look at the packet trace, in this case using Wireshark obviously, and it clearly says too many connections for this IP address, and you get this 421. Those codes are quite important. When it starts with a 4, it's a client error. When it starts with a 5, it's a server error. So you can actually get an idea of what things mean by simply looking at those response codes. And I'm going to say it's kind of a standard, because a lot of protocols use the same response codes, Telnet, HTTP, FTP, all that kind of stuff. So once you learn those codes, or you have a reference sheet for those codes, then you can find out and get a clue as to where the problem might be happening. And you can even see in this trace, it starts off with a SYN, and then you get a SYNAC, and then all of a sudden the application says, hey, you know what, there's too many connections, but you see it says request user anonymous. The client is still trying to log in, and the server responds with a reset. For the people not familiar with a TCP reset, the best way to explain a reset is you put your hand out to shake somebody's hand, and they punch you square between the eyes. That's a reset. So with most people, that's enough to stop the conversation, but with most applications, they don't get the hint, and they try to connect again. Now, this is what Chrome shows you when all that happens. It says the web page is not available, and it says error connection reset. So it is true. There was a reset. It's absolutely correct. But it didn't say anything about too many connections, not enough connections, or any reference to the word connection. So in this case, when most people see this, they think, oh, the web page isn't available, therefore the internet's down, or the server's down. So they'll ping the server, and guess what? It'll respond to a ping. So the troubleshooting algorithm gets kind of thrown out of whack when you don't quite understand what it's trying to tell you. This would be a lot more helpful if Chrome, at the beginning of this ERR message, had a little notation that said, for example, TCP or TCP RST, something that somebody who knows packet analysis would say, oh, wow, that's a reset. What's going on with that? Internet Explorer is quite funny. When this condition occurs, it simply says, you know what, you got to log in again. And you get stuck in this, I'm going to call this turnstile of insanity, where you keep trying to log in, and guess what? You don't have enough connections, so you try to log in. And the reason why you don't have enough connections is because logging in is one connection. But the next thing Internet Explorer tries to do, and Chrome, is display the contents of that folder or directory. Well, that's the data connection, and you don't have a secondary connection. So what Internet Explorer does says, well, I can't show the directory. Let's try this again. Let's try this again, and so on, and so on, and so on. FileZilla, on the other hand, literally says, as you can see down here, it says response 421, too many connections for this IP address. Now, that's fantastic. Now, provided you're looking at the status or the log screen, you'll see that and say, oh, wow, too many connections. That's obvious. And then from there, you can try to fix your problem. WSFTP, this is, I'm going to say, everybody has this somewhere. It says the same thing. So these types of applications where they show you the raw data coming back, to me, is ideal. I love those kinds of apps because they're giving you the best possible clue you can to actually figure out what the problem is. Okay. Now, this is another quick scenario where I set up an FTP server to register and record somebody's IP address who's logged in incorrectly 3 times. And when that happens, the server records your IP and puts you in a blocked list. And then from then on in, you can't log in anymore. And you can set it up so there's a timeout value where you can try again, some kind of grace period. But in this case, this is a fairly sensitive server. If you get it wrong in 3 tries, you're banned forever until the administrator releases the ban. So you can see what happens here. You know, password required for videos, and you can see the password incorrect. And that was the 3rd time. There's no need seeing the other 2. And you can see you get your reset again, right? The good old reset. And then the connection tries to get established, and does, because it's not a TCP issue. And then all of a sudden you get a fin. And that's not a reset. That's a nice, polite, see you later. And you can see the conversation still tries to go on, and then finally you get that reset. So from the server's perspective, this is what I didn't show you in the first example. It says clearly here, denied access to this IP address because of banned or allowed match. So it's in that list of IPs that are now banned. Now, this is an FTP server that is facing the internet, and you can see within the just the last week alone, this is a list of all the IPs that have found this server on the internet and tried to poke around. So I find this to be quite a helpful little security tip, that when you could turn this on, you just ban the IP and that's the end of it. Well, you can even see here in the middle, 141.105.70.98 and then 39. These are obviously from the same network, obviously. So that 98 got blocked, the 39 got blocked, and then guess what? It doesn't look like 141 ever tried again. So it's important to understand what the server's doing, because from the client's perspective, you can have a totally different behavior in what it's doing. Move on. So with Internet Explorer, with this specific example, it says, hey, make sure your web address is correct. Well, it is. That's not what the problem is. The problem is I'm banned. It's not letting me talk to it. There's no reference that I have a reset sent to me. You see what I'm saying? So because the conditions of the problem have changed slightly, what Internet Explorer reports back is slightly different as well. And not to mention, obviously, different versions of Internet Explorer will report different messages for the same condition. So I'm quite used to getting a new version of software and say, oh, I'm up to IE 50, whatever version we're at. And I'll say, let me try that test again. And guess what? Now it's a totally different message. So it helps to know what that looks like. You can see here Chrome, and now it says no data received. And it says error empty response code. That's totally different than the first example, isn't it? And then, of course, down here you can see the command prompt, the good old, the black screen, the DOS screen, whatever you want to call it. And you can see I tried to FTP to that IP, and it says connected, and then connection closed by remote host. So Chrome or IE did not mention this connection was closed by the remote host. That might have given me a clue. Nobody said anything about the reset because the server just kind of went silent. It didn't even send a response code. That's it. So let me get out of this thing and go back here. I try to keep it short and sweet today. So that was a great example with just FTP, but I've written similar articles that cover HTTP, that cover SQL is a popular one as well. All of these applications, there's a term I like to use in all my sessions called a command interpreter. That's a fancy word for the software. So when an error approaches a software, most applications are not written to try to understand what the password is, or the error is, what the error is. They're used to just reporting what the data is. So when an error approaches the software, most software does, I don't know what to do with that, and that's up to the application people. If they want to let that raw message through, great. If they don't, they might have a generic routine that says you can't get to the server, no data, no connection, whatever it happens to be. So it really helps if you have the opportunity to measure these things before it breaks, because unfortunately people see this stuff when it works, but they get called when it doesn't work. So I've got even on my website, I've covered free FTP servers, free HTTP servers. They're portable, doesn't cost anything. Run them off a key and run your tools and see what they say. I've seen a lot of tools that report nothing, zero, and you think it's still working, and it's not. And there you go.
Well, I think one of the points you made earlier is if you can't see it all, you're really not going to know what's all going on. And a lot of people do use span, and they have problems. They capture stuff, and the whole answer is not there. They've missed something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Especially if the packet is corrupted legitimately, then a switch won't pass it, and your Microsoft driver won't catch it. So then you got nothing, right?
Right. And a lot of these baseline attacks are filtered out by the span, okay?
Yeah,
and
right.
Of course, anything that has anything to do with the real time. So if you're looking at trying to say, well, how effective is my movie, that I'm presenting this movie to somebody, or how effective is my music, whatever, something that's real time, mm-hmm. that people don't want it to go.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so you want to see that with a real tap, a full duplex hub, and you want them to see that, because otherwise, with a span port, you're not going to.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't stress enough that when you capture packets from the server and you capture packets from the client, that's totally different perspectives. So again, if you've never done that, please do that, right? Get a free web server, free FTP server, start Wireshark, and then get another machine to upload and download, and you'll see how different the trace is. You need to see things when they're broken so you can fix them. And I always harp on this a little bit. I say every other profession is allowed to play with stuff when it's not going well, like a fireman, like a doctor, like a police officer. They're allowed to use their tools in scenarios when things don't go well. network people don't. They buy tools, they play with it when it works, and when it doesn't work, they don't understand what it's being reported, and that makes total sense. They shouldn't understand it because they've never seen it.
Well, it's also about perspective.
Yeah, right.
I mean, in a network, you can't look at everything at one level and understand everything. You've got to be able to look at it from different perspectives in the network. The switch sees something completely different on one side than what you see on the other side of the switch.
Right.
So, and also I tell people this all the time, to always consider the device that you're using to monitor. I mean, Wireshark is an incredible tool, but when you take an incredible tool and put it in a crappy computer, you have a crappy, incredible tool.
And conversely, analyst. If the analyst doesn't know how to work the tool, then you're in trouble too, right?
Yeah, then you have an analyst and effective tool. You know.
And that's where the log comes in, because perspective counts. If you have a log, you get the server's perspective. I can't tell you how many times, Tim, we finally get to the administrator, we finally look at the log, and there it's been from day one reporting exactly what the error is, but nobody's ever thought to look at the log or know where to look in the log to find the actual problem. So and Paul Offord from Advanced 7, he's pretty good at this too. He's always in the habit of checking logs. And I'm going to tell you right now, like with all troubleshooting tips and tricks, it's not always going to be the answer, but sometimes, guess what? It's actually going to help you move in the correct direction. And you hit it on the head earlier too, Tim. When there's problems like even performance or attacks, you know, a denial of service, a flood, or whatever, you should find out what that looks like with your tools and how they're reporting things, because a lot of tools won't report that, or some switches will filter out the flood and that sort of thing, right?
Well, some switches will collapse with the flood.
Yeah, that's the extreme bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, but so you need to know what's going on. It's like I tell people, and I think you and I have talked about this before, is if you really want to start learning your network, you start on the outside of your perimeter, your security perimeter. Put in a tap and see what's going on out there. Who's trying to hit you? What kind of attacks? Are they doing DDoS? Are they prepping DOS? Are they, sending you sync acts? Are they looking for holes? Are they doing port scans? And then go to your tap on the inside to make sure that your tools are actually handling that before you get breached, before they drill a hole in your network. And that's the beginning. And another thing I try to tell people is if you're using Wireshark, which is an incredible tool, try not to use Wireshark with 50 other applications running.
Amen to that. And make sure if you have a firewall, it's disabled, because that may filter packets out as well.
Yeah.
Right on.
That way you get a chance to see what's going on. And the one thing great about networking is, and network diagnostics, it is an empirical event. I don't know anybody that comes out of, quote, college, grad school, or anything that can just sit down and plug into a network and say, oh, I see everything going on, I understand everything.
Right.
So, and Denny's little saying here, everything works fine. What? Do we even pay for you for it? No, everything is working fine. Do we pay for it? All right.
Well, no, I actually, a couple of days ago, I found this on the web, and so quickly I sent it to Tony, thinking that, because I knew that this is a working week for him, so thinking that he would get a kick out of this. This is what his customers say to him, right?
Yep.
One of two things is, everything works fine, we don't need to pay you, right? Yeah. What are we paying you for? Everything is not working, what are we paying you for, right?
Yeah, and along that same vein, I always get told, why do we need to look at all these tools? Nobody's complaining yet, everything's working, and I would say they may be working, but are they working well? Yeah. And that's usually when we start poking around. Even last week, we're in the middle of a class, and somebody brings up a topic, and we start capturing some packets in the classroom, and guess what? There's a problem going on right now. In the actual classroom, there's a network issue. And we're like, yeah, look, see? But we don't all get to the internet. It's just slow, so guess what? The internet sucks. We're done. See ya. And that's usually the way it works.
Yeah. I call Tony the Great Data Explorer.
That's right. And Dora's my mom's name, so that kind of works out pretty good. Tony the Explorer, Dora's the Explorer, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I mean, Tony points out some incredible points, Danny. It's empiricism. It's not something you can walk out of anything and know everything about it. And every network, every NOC, every area is different. But you have to be like a doctor. You got to know where to take the pulse from. You have to know where to get temperature. You have to know all these diagnostics. And if you're not out there trying, I'm one of those people that I do not want the medical student that just got his degree and has never seen a real patient. I want someone that's had experience with patients.
Yep. Book smart versus street smarts.
Okay, well,
and trust me, that thermometer does not belong there.
Oh, jeez. And there we go into the gutter, folks. Hold on to your thoughts.
I had a guy once come yelling at me one day when I was working at the hospital, and he was madder than hell because we did on some Phenigrin, which were suppositories.
Nice.
And he came in the next day and he yelled at me and he says, "For all the good these damn things doing, I could be shoving them up my..." And I said, "That's exactly what you were supposed to do, you idiot." So I had to explain to him what rectal.
So let's quick while we're ahead.
Never.
Well, thank you, Tony.
Oh,
I know. Thank you, Tony, for taking time out of your lunch, and so I guess you're gonna go back to work now.
Yeah, I got to find out which wire to pull.
Okay, all right. At least pull the one you just plug in. So
Exactly.
Yeah, just pull that one out, Tony. Don't start going around. Let's just do.
Why not?
All right. Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tony. And if I don't see you guys before the holiday, have a great one. Okay, but I'm sure I will see you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, we got some more things coming up. Some more things.
And then actually on Thursday we have the second part of the interview with our one of our sponsors. So be sure to tune into that. Okay. All right.
Tony,
thank you,
good, Tony, and thanks for everything, buddy. It's great to have you around.
Thank
No
you,
problem.
Tony.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks everyone. And see you soon. Bye bye.